Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Instilling Hope for Parents, Back to School 2020. This will be presented by Tina Feigl. I'll talk a little bit about her in just a couple moments. This webinar is another in the continuing series of webinars to support our customers during these challenging times, and I'm sure we can all relate to the topic that Tina will be presenting on today. My name is Angela Diver. I'll be facilitating today along with Kevin Miracle, our technology expert, and his team. Before we get started, I just have a few quick housekeeping notes. All participants are muted due to the large numbers. So I want to be sure that everyone can hear us. Can you please raise your hand through the computer if you can hear? Wonderful. Thank you so much. This webinar is 60 minutes of content, and we will respond to questions at the end if we have some time, and we are planning on that for today. If you have any questions, please post them in the question box, which is located on the control panel. In the unlikelihood that the video that Tina is presenting today should go out, she will continue to talk until her video comes back up. Also in the control panel, the handout section has a handout for today's presentation and a certificate of attendance. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on your EAP's website in the next couple of days. So let me tell you a few things about Tina before she gets started this afternoon. Tina Feigl has her master's in education, and she is the director of family engagement at A New Family Services in St. Paul, Minnesota. She's a former school psychologist, the mother of 3 wonderful sons and their equally wonderful spouses, and grandmother of 4 spunky grandchildren. Tina's passion is bringing peace to homes and schools by helping adults to heal challenging child behavior with the specific, highly effective, present moment parenting. Since 2000, Tina has operated her business, the Center for the Challenging Child, which is now a branch of A New Family Services. As a coach and trainer of coaches, Tina supports adults in applying the techniques in her books, Present Moment Parenting, The Guide to a Peaceful Life with Your Intense Child, winner of the 2017 Mom's Choice Gold Award, and available on Amazon and Audible, and her ebook, Healing the Heart of Your Traumatized Child, which is also available on Amazon. Tina, welcome, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you now.
Thank you, Angela, and welcome everyone. It's just wonderful to have you here. I know that this is a little strange to be learning online for many people, so I'm just going to pace this the best that I possibly can. And I do really want to encourage you to write down questions, so get something to write with if you can right now, and then we'll have some question and answer time at the end. With this many people, we won't get as many questions answered as we would like, but we will certainly do our best to answer some. Also, my email is at the bottom. If you still have a question, don't hesitate, tfeigl@anewfs.org. Don't hesitate to write me an email. And now my slides are frozen. Just trying to figure out what to do here. Oh, there we go. There we go. So this video is for all employees served by All-One Health and its family of EAPs. So the issues at hand. First thing that I want to list is self-care, because I think it's the thing that gets left behind for most parents. And so we're going to talk more about that. Current stressors are the threat of illness, work concerns, children's schoolwork, household responsibilities, and just general, I guess we would say, fear that goes with the pandemic and all the changes that we have had to undergo as a result of having a pandemic. And then compassion fatigue. It gets to the point where parents are feeling for their kids and then they run out of steam oftentimes. And I just want you to know that we feel you and we understand that that can happen. And go back to self-care when we're talking about compassion fatigue. We want people to understand that you can't give from an empty well. You have to fill your own well in order to continue to give for however long this situation is going to last. It's so unknown. There are no perfect answers. And I love this phrase, we're always doing the next best thing. This is not a situation that any of us has ever had to deal with. And many people are more along the lines of perfectionist, where they think they have to be doing their best all the time. If you're one of those, help yourself with this phrase, I'm doing the next best thing. You love your kids and you'd never want them sick or spreading sickness to other people. And you also care for the adults in your children's school and are concerned for them as well. So we have so many factors to consider. Some kids are going to school. Some kids are staying home full time. Some kids' schedules are very hard to follow. They have to log on at certain hours and they need a lot of support from parents. It's just a really tough situation. This is the parenting job that nobody signed up for. Some parents work outside the home, some at home. Again, you're adapting to new schedules, which feels chaotic at times. You want it to be over as soon as possible. And who wouldn't, really? And you're feeling anxious about what's coming. You're having to help your kids with their big feelings too. They're feeling anxious about what's coming. Some schools have opened and are closing again nationally. So I'm in the Midwest where things are really intense right now with the pandemic. So I've seen some schools going back to full-time virtual because they had outbreaks. And not only that, because staff has to quarantine because they've had exposures and there's not enough staff in the school to keep school going. That was the reason I heard just recently. And kids may be worried about your family and your extended family. What if someone you know gets very sick or dies? What if someone that you know has already gotten very sick or died? These are things that are weighing on kids and weighing on parents, therefore. I love this quote from Emily King. Do not go into this school year with 2019 goals. This is 2020, have 2020 goals, which are number one, safety, connection, mental wellness, physical health, and maintaining relationships. You notice that this does not say anything about make sure they get an A in math, because we really have to just have different goals. I also want to share, and this is on your handout, I can't do it right now, but there is a video on self-compassion in difficult times by Dr. Kristen Neff, who wrote the book Self-Compassion. And I'm going to encourage you all after this presentation, as soon as you possibly can, to watch that video. Resilience is key during such difficult times. So you want to think in terms of your children's resilience and your own resilience. The definition of resilience is the ability to cope with and adapt to challenges and to overcome adversity. And by research, we know what helps children become more resilient is one caring adult and a stable, safe, and nurturing environment. So spending time as a family, well, we don't have to work that hard at spending time as a family right now. We're spending time, but we may be seeing kids, particularly teens, isolating themselves. And I'm going to talk about that in a little while later on in the presentation. But how do we create definite family time? That's the thing. The other thing is authoritative parenting, not strict or overly permissive. So we want to be sure that it's collaborative. We want to be sure that we're including the kids in the conversation, listening to their ideas, taking their input, tapping their creativity, so that we are not simply saying, I'm the authority, I'm telling you how things are going, and you have to abide by my rules. If we do it that way, we'll get so much pushback that again drains more of your energy and is hard on your resilience. So we want it to be collaborative, including the kids, clear, so that once a decision is made, it's made, and then boundaries. Like, I'm willing to do this, and I can't do more than that, and so I need you to pick up the slack. Routines such as family dinner. Everyone gets a chance to choose the meal. Everyone gets a chance to learn how to cook. Everyone gets a chance to organize the kitchen. All those things that go into the routines of family life. Relatives and friends communicating with technology and being outdoors as much as possible. In the Midwest, we got robbed of that this week because we've had temperatures in the 20s and 30s way early, the earliest it's ever been in our area. So being outdoors is a little more tricky than it was. Emotional communication, just talking in terms of feelings, which when we get so busy with do, and get this done, we tend to leave the emotional communication behind. We're going to talk more about that today too. Positive meaning making within the pandemic. What are the gifts that we're noticing of being together at home more? What are the gifts of watching your children become more resilient, watching yourself become more resilient? And then also helpful beliefs support resilience. We'll get through this together, and also we're going to tap our faith. If you're a family of faith, faith beliefs can be very, very helpful to support resilience. Resilience increases family connections, reduces mental health concerns, and predicts future coping skills, avoiding crises. And this is very important for us to understand, that while kids are learning resilience during the pandemic, we're actually helping them build some building blocks for future crises that may occur in their lives. There is that gift. There's an article in the Washington Post about helping people through the pandemic, helping parents particularly. And I just took some ideas from that for this presentation. And one of them is to try to avoid catastrophizing, to saying that this is so awful, we wish this was over, it's the worst thing that's ever happened, we've never had to deal with such horrible stuff. Those are catastrophizing statements that should be avoided in your home to help your kids avoid losing their hope. Remember, there are thousands of kids who do well as homeschoolers, and so it was a sudden adjustment. It wasn't a choice. There was no ability to plan when we had to close schools or go to hybrid, but there are thousands of kids who do well, and as we get further into the year, we can see skill building happening. Accept children's feelings as they arrive and give them permission to express and accept emotions of fear, doubt, rage, sadness, and help them write or draw these feelings. I think it's so helpful if you are able to have a journal yourself and your children, to just be able to put the feelings on the paper and stick them over there so they don't have to live so strongly within the child or within yourself. Help children avoid victim mentality. I'm so sad. I just need my friends. I feel like I'm never going to be able to be with them normally again. And to kids, it just feels like this is forever. We don't know when it will end, but their perspective as they're developing, it's very hard for them to see the way adults do, that this too shall pass. We have to really help them realize that we're together, we're doing the best we can, and there's a lot to learn about being together and doing the best we can here. Help them with delayed gratification, grieving and moving on, and finding new meaning and new coping skills. So those are all things we're going to talk about. So also hope. This is a temporary situation, although it feels permanent, especially to kids, as I just mentioned. When you were a kid, you can maybe remember that you had this fabulous summer and you thought that the summer was going to last forever. You didn't have so much history where you realized that summer turns to fall and then to winter. You just were so deeply engrossed in what was happening in your world, it felt like it was going to last forever. And this is true of children. So we need to just support them in the fact that they feel that way. And as adults, we also know everything changes. Life is full of adversity. As a privileged society, we run from it. We want it all fixed right now. Maybe you've noticed that in yourself, that you just want it over. We are all pretty tired of pandemic life right now, aren't we? We just want it to be gone. And that's okay. Just admit that. Just let that come to the surface so that it can be addressed instead of kind of keeping it underneath. That's a very big piece, is letting the feelings come to the surface, your own and your children's. Coping with and accepting negative experiences are avenues to finding new strengths. So as I said, there's opportunity here to build for ourselves and for our kids. Learning to live in the sadness and disappointment is a huge life lesson, as we all experience these as we grow, and will help our children if we don't think it's hopeless. We want to change, not lower our expectations. A lot of people are worried about that phrase, Libby. You just got to lower your expectations. It feels like an invitation to be less than perfect, to be less than you can be. And we do have a bit of a perfection thing around parenting happening in our world right now. And I would just like to say we're changing our expectations. We're focusing on the skill building, the life skill building that the kids are experiencing and that we are experiencing, rather than making sure that all the T's on the assignment are crossed and all the I's are dotted. Opt out of rigid expectations, understanding that everyone is having to do this, including schools. So most teachers are trying to uphold the standards that they had before the pandemic hit, and they're finding that loosening a little bit here and there is actually good for the kids, and being too rigid turns them away. It discourages them, and then they stop tuning in. So we really want to keep them engaged by just relaxing a little bit about what we're expecting of them. And new opportunities will arise if we look for them. I'd like to give an example. My young grandkids, who were 7 and 5 at the time, they're 8 and 6 now, but they decided that they weren't satisfied with reading books. They wanted to write books. And so I got this very excited FaceTime call. Nana, Henry and I are writing a book together, and I'm doing the words and he's doing the illustrations. And I was just blown away that kids so young could come up with a storyline and match illustrations, and most importantly, collaborate with each other, because that wasn't something that was really natural to them at that phase of their lives. And so I really got a huge burst of joy when I heard them speak about the fact that their togetherness has caused them to collaborate on a project. And since then, they've written several books, and they have been spending time up in Henry's room writing together instead of, being in their parents' space all the time, which has been very fascinating to watch. That was something they'd never done before. And the writer of this article in the Washington Post, Kristen Howerton, said that her kids are teens, and they had asked to dig a very deep, wide hole in the yard. And she's like, what? And her husband and she talked about it. And what they wanted to do was put chairs in the deep, wide hole so they would have their own sort of built-in space to meet with each other. And so there's creativity that's coming from this. Necessity is the mother of invention, and this is something we're really seeing happening. And if you look for that, you might see that in your own family as well. Now we're going to talk about a PREPARE acronym: probe, reassure, explain, routines, emotion coaching. So probe gently for the feelings of the child regarding changes in plans. Include the child according to their age and understanding. And this again, I'm just going to keep emphasizing include the child. Because again, if we take an authoritarian, my way or the highway, you do what I say kind of approach, we've already got kids who are under stress. And if we add that to it, it's going to be very difficult for them to come up with the ability to collaborate and cooperate with you. Most kids understand the pandemic, but be sure to explain how we keep ourselves safe. We don't want to scare young or anxious kids. So we don't want to talk to them about the number of deaths or leave the news running where they're hearing things. Please turn off the news. Please get your news from other places so that the kids are not exposed to too much information. And why I'm saying that is because they can absorb this information, but they don't have the life experience or the life skills to comfort themselves. And hardly we have a life experience to comfort ourselves in some moments, right? So we don't want to burden them with something that is not necessary to burden them with, because they just don't have what it takes to comfort themselves because they're young. Start with, what do you know about the pandemic, or what do you know about coronavirus or COVID-19, so that we get a clear sense of where the children are and if they need more information, but only give them information that they need. They may worry that their parents could die. They may ask about it in general terms, like they may say, do people in their 30s or their 40s die from the pandemic? That would be a way that they're letting you know that they are concerned about you. So then you very gently say, we're doing everything we can to stay safe and keep each other safe. Remind them with small efforts as they happen, such as washing hands and wearing masks, that this is the same as looking both ways and wearing seatbelts. We're simply engaging in safety measures. Here I am washing my hands. Here I am putting on my mask. Here I am saying, if we're going to get together, I need to be distanced 6 feet apart from anyone else, so that they're seeing you demonstrate the safety. That helps them feel safe. And also, we can't say for sure that we'll all be okay, which is the toughest thing about this, because the pandemic has a mind of its own, and it's showing up in places that we didn't anticipate all over the country. So we don't want to promise kids, yes, I promise you everyone in our family will all be okay. We do want to just help them live with the uncertainty. And one time I heard that was one of the definitions of being an adult, is learning to live with uncertainty. And boy, are we ever learning that at this point in our lives, right? Explain. Avoid contributing to misinformation. Use age-appropriate language with kids. So if they are learning something virtually or in person from their friends that isn't really true about the pandemic, don't contribute to it, and also clarify how you're feeling about it. You know, in our family, we're talking about this, this, and this. If a child asks, when will the virus be over? You can answer by saying, that's a really great question. We're all feeling frustrated over this. And is this frustrating for you too? So we're again addressing the emotional aspects here, because we don't have definite scientific answers on many things. If the child has misinformation, give the accurate info whenever possible. If the child has a trauma history, and trauma can be a wide variety of things. Let's just say you have foster kids or you have adopted kids. There's some trauma in their history. If you've had kids who've had severe illness, if you have kids who have suffered sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse in their lifetimes, trauma reminders may be triggered by hearing stories about the pandemic, like someone died in their family or had a severe illness in their family, or they were separated in some other way. And you can say, in some ways it's the same, I know that was a hard time for you and you got through it. Reminding kids of their strength is very important during the pandemic. Talk about their understanding of illness and death. They may be even thinking of their own life and death and dying. Right around the age of 5 or 6, kids start to think more and more about the ramifications of death and dying. There are many books available, and I just encourage you to read books about death and dying with your children according to their age group. So if you just Google 5-year-old book, death, dying, you will find a variety of books, and you can take a look at those and see which ones are available or are more suited to your family. And I just think that that is another way to open up conversations, to read together, a very helpful way, because it sort of removes you and the child 1 degree from that direct conversation. If you're reading a book together, then you can use it as a springboard for conversation. It just is a nice door opening toward the conversation. Sometimes a smell, a song, or a feeling could trigger their grief memory. So be aware that this can be a factor, that their bodies are remembering the grief and the trauma. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote this book about the fact that when trauma occurs, it does get stored in the body. The way to help kids overcome it, the way to help yourself overcome it, if you also have a trauma history, is to bring it to the surface very gently and process it. Otherwise, it stays stuffed inside and it comes out sideways. All the emotional responses come out indirectly. What we want to do is get to the ability to express feelings directly so they don't have to come out in unwanted behaviors. So ways to connect, listen deeply, pause when a child has said something, reiterate, I think I heard you just say that you're feeling upset because you really miss seeing Grandma and Grandpa. I think I just heard you say that you're feeling worried that your grades aren't as good as they were last year when you could go to school. I think you're missing your teacher. I think you're missing going to the school every day and having your routine, getting up, getting dressed, going on the bus or getting a ride. I think that feels like a loss right now. I think you're missing your sports activities. Some kids are still participating in sports, in some areas they're not. And so just whatever is true for your child, feed it back to them so that they feel seen and heard by you. Engage on what they need and answer one question at a time. Answer all their questions until they're done asking, which requires some pausing. Again, just listen quietly. Stay with the child until they seem done. And revisit the questions as needed when the children are in a good space. And leave the door open for more questions. So you can say, if you have more questions about this in a couple days, don't hesitate to come and talk to me about it. Now that sounds like a lot of burden for parents to have to deal with these emotions, but really what it does is it gives you a better behavior on the part of your child because he or she has felt seen and heard. And when a child feels seen and heard, they don't have to act out. They don't have to say, see me, I have all these deep feelings. And that's what the acting out really ends up being. So if you put this effort in advance, the return on investment is great because you'll see less negative behavior to which you have to respond. It's really a powerful process. Remind the child of what's going well and thank them for their questions. Appreciate their efforts to cooperate at home. You know, if a child just simply does something very routine, like take their dishes into the kitchen and put them in the dishwasher, let's just say, just appreciate, just say, can I talk to you for a second? I know this is like a routine thing, but I just want to tell you that I really do appreciate you putting your dishes in the dishwasher, because that way we're spreading out the work in our home, and that's so helpful. Having a schedule creates security. Weekdays and weekends might have a little bit different schedule, but they should stay somewhat the same because of sleep hygiene being very important. Same time to bed and getting up can be very important, particularly for teens. This is hard because their biological clock adjusts an hour later as they go into their teen years. So they have a tendency to need to sleep in more and stay up later. And this is something natural. Many schools have started their school days later because of this. High schools have been doing that. And that's a good thing because it goes with the naturalness of the child's body. And I will just say here, be flexible, be somewhat flexible if there's a schedule in place and you need to flex it a little bit for a really good reason that the child has, or that you have, or that the family has. That's important too. You don't want to be so rigid that you start to meet with resistance. You want to also plan pandemic safe fun. Movie night, socially distant gatherings of up to 10 with masks, things that can bring some lightheartedness into family life. And also we want to ask the kids to help plan that. And we want to validate the children's experiences of the routines to say, okay, let's talk about your routine for just a few minutes. Is it working for you? Is there anything that we need to adjust? And each child has a different routine because their schooling requirements are different. So that would be some one-on-one conversation that you really want to have. Again, validate the feelings, suggest what they may feel, model your own coping skills. You can say some things to your kids like, I was having a rough time yesterday. And the way I coped with it was I got my sister on the phone and just talked it all out, and she told me her stuff too, and then I felt better. The thing is that kids don't even realize that parents are coping or that they have skills in coping, because we forget to tell them oftentimes that we're doing things too that make our lives a little bit easier in very tough times. And avoid saying what kids should or shouldn't feel. We do not want to help them think that any of their feelings are invalid, because feelings are just feelings. We don't have control over what we feel generally. We can give ourselves a better message to feel better, but the feelings, when they show up to begin with, they're just feelings. So if we just can accept everything the child feels, that doesn't mean we agree with it, but we accept it. And that's very important for connecting with the child. The more you draw them toward you, the safer they feel, and you are their safety source at this time. So just think about drawing them toward you. So this prepare source all came from Dr. Lauren Marlott at UCLA. Another really helpful device you might want to try is a feelings thermometer. I took this one off the internet. There are many, like 20, 30 feelings thermometers posted if you just Google feelings thermometer. And I think you might want to print one out or use this one from your handout. So they are blue at the bottom, sad; green, calm; getting yellow, green, happy; yellow, excited; more toward orange, scared; annoyed; and red is angry. And I think it's really helpful. I had a mom use this who I was coaching recently. Her son had one in the back seat of the car, and he'd had a rough day at school, and he took this chart and he said, I'm right here. And he's 5 years old, and he could identify where he was on the thermometer. This is sort of one of those name it to tame it things that we really want to help kids with. This is also why we reflect their feelings to them. I think you may be feeling this, or if I guess, will you tell me if I'm right or wrong about how you're feeling? Show me right here. I think you might be annoyed. Is that right? Using this as a tool for kids can be extremely helpful. It's a visual to help them name it to tame it. And again, once it's named, once it's expressed directly, you see less acting out, because when it's on the surface and it can be dealt with, it doesn't go underground and come out as negative behavior. The thermometer helps children know that feelings are all okay. You deserve to be heard when you have strong feelings. If we don't have time to listen right now, please write your feelings down or draw them for us. And we'll get back to that as soon as I'm done with this thing that I have to be engaged in right this minute. As soon as I'm done with this phone call, as soon as I'm done with my work day, as soon as I'm done helping your brother with his homework, I am going to come back and listen to your feelings. And also note to children that feelings change. Note to yourself that feelings change. I read a study one time that said that the average human feeling lasts about 15 minutes. And as adults, we know that they change. Children, again, feel like everything that's here right now is permanent. So we can help them with the idea that feelings change. And we can even look back with them and say, remember this morning when you were so upset? I just want to give you hope, because I want you to realize that feelings change. They don't last forever. Because this afternoon, you got those 3 assignments done and you were just feeling so much better. Feelings really do change, don't they? Change the focus to optimism for your children. That's how you approach school, with a sense of calm. And I love these questions that are interview questions. And interviewing kids is a really good way to connect with them. Being curious about them is a really good way to connect with them. So what do you love learning about? What do you most look forward to during this school year? What are 3 awesome things about yourself? What is the thing you'd like your teacher and classmates to know about you? What is something new you'd like to create, make, try, build, and/or learn about? The source for this is Wholehearted School Counseling. I just love those questions. They're on your handout. Feel free to use them. A strategy to decrease stress for all is to collect your thoughts, write them down. Plan a family meeting that includes the children in the decision making. If you haven't been meeting as a family to discuss your life process together and make a plan and give each other feedback, start having family meetings now. It is so important. You can invite the kids to the family meeting. You can say, we're having a meeting at 6 o'clock on Sunday. Are you available then? Have the kids decide what the snack is going to be during the meeting, and what room you're going to meet in, and what music you might have in the background, and all kinds of ways to involve kids in the family meeting. And then use a talking piece, which is a Native American tradition, where whoever has the talking piece talks, whoever doesn't have the talking piece listens. So that keeps people from interrupting. It also allows people to know that they've got the stage and they're safely not going to be interrupted. So there are all kinds of ways to run a family meeting, and they're in my book too. And I'll give you that information at the end. Present moment parenting. Explain that we're in a time that's never occurred in our lifetimes, and we need each other to navigate it. And that's where the family meeting comes in again, is to pull together. And then place trust in the children. There are a lot of times when we think we have to be so in charge of them that we forget to notice that they're doing some of the things that we've taught them. And so if we just take a little time to say, you know what I saw you do today? Let's just say this is a bedtime thing. I saw you be such a good friend to your friend who was struggling right then. I kind of overheard your conversation as you were talking, and I realized how supportive you were being. And I realized I can trust you to really be a supportive human being in the world. This is phenomenal. So pointing out the good things, they're there. You just got to use the right lens to look for them. Take care of yourselves and let children know why you're taking a coffee break, connecting with a friend, or writing in your feelings journal. Tell them this is your coping strategy. This is what you're doing so that you can keep going and be there for other people. The family meeting agenda. We have school and work to juggle now. All hands on deck. Everybody's efforts are needed. most of it will happen at home, so we need to make our home the best it can be together. We need a schedule, some of which will be provided by the school. We need one of you to write it out for us. We need fun on the schedule. Child-directed play is important. We also need school attendance and homework and household management. For example, 5 people live here and 5 people contribute to the upkeep. We all make messes, and so 5 people are responsible. I have recently, in my parent coaching world, banned the phrase "help mom." We're not helping mom, we're helping all of us. And if a child feels like part of a team, you'll see more collaboration, you'll see more cooperation. Then, get that picked up. I told you this last week that you were supposed to have a neat room, and it's not, that kind of thing is not the way to get a neat room out of your kids. Or you might get a temporarily neat room, and then very soon it's not anymore. So I want more permanent solutions for you, for your family. So that's why talking in advance and making a plan and including the kids in a family meeting is very effective. School refusal. Maybe some of you have run into this. Some children with moderate to severe anxiety or depression or just situational feelings don't benefit from being forced to go to school. So if you have a child that falls into this category, I just wanted to say that a note from the doctor can support the child who has an individualized educational plan and not being expected to attend every day. If you can get hold of the teacher and ask for an IEP meeting or an IEP adjustment, add it to the IEP if it's not already there. Help the child build resilience by saying, what part of the day might be manageable today? And accept a shorter day, because if you accept a shorter day, that gives the child a little traction for actually attending when things are so strange right now. And even if you have school refusal when there's no pandemic, these are helpful hints. What part of the day might be manageable today? Instead of saying, you've got to at least put in 2 hours, the way you present it can make all the difference in the way it's received. Consider each person's responsibilities. Adults are responsible for their employment, helping kids with homework, and overseeing and participating in the household needs. Children are responsible for their self-care, bathing, getting dressed, brushing teeth, and doing their hair, their rooms, their laundry, their dishes, their weekly tasks, and schoolwork. And I did say laundry there. As I was raising my 3 sons, they all knew how to do their laundry when they were like 12 years old. And that really took a big piece of what was going on household-wise off my shoulders, and I was very, very grateful. So kids can learn how to do the laundry. It is not rocket science. And if they come out with pink t-shirts that used to be white occasionally, so what? Let them do it kid style, but let them do it. If it's not perfect, that's okay. Live with that, because in many areas as well, it's a child doing this. They are inexperienced, but they're also learning. And there again is great return on investment in allowing them time to learn. Children are responsible for fun, which is board games, outdoor games, singing to music, bike riding, skateboarding, scootering, sports. And everyone who can participates in the fun. So this is just like a way to talk about things at a family meeting, that we all have our own little square here that says what we're responsible for. And I think simply delineating it, just pointing it out in words, is really helpful for kids to get the big picture. As adults, we have a tendency to carry the big picture, but we have a tendency not to share it with them. So this is really helpful to bring them in on it. This is treating kids more like adults than children in many ways, and that's helpful. It helps them grow. So now we choose which jobs are whose together. Bed making, self-care, dishes, watering plants, feeding pets, vacuuming, dusting, laundry, meal planning, shopping, and cooking. And I was thinking about this too. If you're doing some online shopping, it would be kind of fun to teach the older kids how to navigate looking online to see what's available. Even if you're buying groceries online, some people are doing that. Meal planning could be another thing that kids could be involved in, which could take the burden away from the adults and also be huge skill building for the kids. And we can make a task schedule and post it, but the kids should be the ones who make the task schedule and post it. So I guess what I'm saying a little bit here is get lazy, parents. That's a stress reliever for you to allow the kids their role in the family. It also builds their sense of self. The greatest human need is to be needed. We think right now in our society it's to be entertained, but actually it's to be needed. And you can feel this in your own life. In times when you have felt needed, that has been like a really rewarding part of your life. And that's true for kids too, but we forget to need them. And they have many more capabilities than we realize. And together, we can also create a plan for the jobs if they aren't getting done. So that would be an interesting conversation. Let's just say so-and-so is assigned to this week, like vacuuming, and it didn't get done. What's our plan for getting it done? You know, kids will be pretty creative with that. And if you hand it to them, they're much more likely to go with it than if it gets handed down from on high. Also, we know that nothing is perfect, so we have some grace for each other and ourselves during stressful times. What does grace look like? Certain situations where a delay in getting a household task is reasonable and is followed up with doing it later, maybe followed up with having some help from a sibling, followed up with having some help from an adult. Those are things that we want to, where we say the flexibility comes in. And then even if there's follow through that's late, offer big appreciation for the fact that it got done, because we have a tendency to say, well, you got that done, but it was supposed to be done 3 hours ago. Try not to do that. Try to just really appreciate that it got done, because whatever you give energy to is going to be seen again. That's rewarding to give your energy to something. So if you give positive energy to the little things that kids do well, you will see that again. If you give negative energy to the things kids don't do well, you will see that again. So try to change your focus to what they do well. That'll lift you up too, because you get to give lots of good feedback to kids. Distance learning for tips for kids who have trouble focusing. Fidgets during study time. Have lots of physical activity before and after the need to focus. And some kids have to move to learn. Kids who have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, really benefit from sitting on an exercise ball while they're trying to do their homework, or from standing up and doing jumping jacks as they're spelling their words out loud. That's how they learn. With the way schools are set up these days, we think that you're supposed to sit still in a desk to concentrate. It's amazing what kids who have trouble concentrating are actually absorbing when they don't look like they're concentrating. They don't look like us. So they may be actually absorbing much more than you realize, and they may need to move to learn. They can set timers for themselves. It doesn't have to be the parents doing it. So that's another grown-up thing you can give them to do that gives them a sense of, I'm in charge of myself. And it can lower anxiety quite a bit when kids feel more in charge of themselves. Like last second joining of class is typical, and focus on accomplishing the goal. You made it. You made it. You did it. That's the way you should be responding, rather than, well, that was really pretty last second, which doesn't lift the kid up, doesn't draw the child toward you. And you really want to do those two things to help them through this difficult time. So let go of your way of doing it. You would have been there 10 minutes early. They're there last second, they got there. Or even if they got there 5 minutes late, they got there. They're kids, they're not adults. The parts of their brain that are in the prefrontal cortex behind the forehead are not fully developed yet. And those are the planning ahead parts of the brain. we don't want to ask them to use equipment they don't have access to at this time. We want to allow for the fact that they're children. A visual schedule relieves anxiety and adds predictable structure, creating security. We want kids who feel safe because kids who feel safe behave better. Teens. During the pandemic, many teens isolate in their rooms. It's normal for them to spend time away from parents and with their peers, to shut parents out. This is part of individuation, and it's appropriate for their development. They have to become not mom and not dad when they're teenagers to become their own adult. Be sure to connect with them despite their natural resistance. And I often have parents write notes to their teenage kids just to say, here's what I see that you've been doing really great this last week, and I'm so proud of you. Love you much, you know, kind of thing, that can lift them up and support their individuation rather than regard it as being contrary or oppositional. We want to help them understand that that's how they learn to be their human selves as adults. Give fewer directives, but just be curious about your teens. Tell me about that. What happened when you were playing your video game that got you so upset? What happened when I asked you to get offline for the evening? What happened when your friend was so worried about something that was going on at their home? Be curious. If you're asking questions instead of getting directives, you're going to be drawing that child toward you and feeling much stronger. And look at this room. What needs to happen here? Instead of, you got to get this room cleaned up. You know, help them think with you. That's how they develop their prefrontal cortex to do the planning ahead. And ask questions instead. You know, it's always ask questions. How is a really good question. I just want you to remember how. Just write that one down if you're taking notes. And online safety, be sure parental controls are in place with your internet service provider. At your family meeting, say, we're going to decide together what's reasonable for screen time and activity. We need a solution we can all live with. So we're going to keep talking until we come up with something that we can all live with. Revisit it if it's not working. And monitor your kids' devices. You're paying, so you have access. Let them know in advance. All devices charge in the kitchen overnight because kids can be up till 2 o'clock in the morning. We know that. Daily gratitude expressions. Plan for how to express daily gratitude during the pandemic and disruption of school schedules, friend time, and life as we know it. Rotate the responsibility for making sure this happens. For example, everyone writes their gratitude on paper and puts it in a jar, and one person per day reads them all out loud to the family. Staying in gratitude is a major stress reliever. And generosity is another way of relieving stress, so kids can make art and send it to grandparents, cousins, friends, church members. Kids can participate in choosing a charity for contributions, and they can mow lawns or shovel snow for elderly neighbors and expect nothing in return, which is a unique thought to teach your children to be that generous. It won't be perfect. Release yourself from the idea that perfection exists. Forgive yourself for times when you blow it. Shoot for 75 to 80% success with all of these things, and remember self-care. Here's my book, Present Moment Parenting, available on Amazon and Audible. So if you're a listener to books, it's on Audible. And if you would like to join our monthly newsletter, text 22828 and enter PMP Rocks and then your email address. This is on your handout too. Okay, questions?
Tina, thank you. That was wonderful. And I appreciate the very good and concrete information that you shared today, especially as a parent myself. So there's a few questions that have come through, so I thought I would just go ahead and ask those on behalf of the participants. And you should have enough time to be able to do that. So the first one, pretty easy. Can you remind us of the name of the book that you mentioned about the body remembering trauma? I didn't catch that one myself.
That was The Body Keeps the Score. by
The
Dr.
body keeps
Van
the
Der.
score. Okay,
Body keeps the score.
I'm writing that down too. Okay, and then the next question came a little bit earlier in your presentation. One of the participants here asked about what age should kids be exposed to the news? It sounds like they have an 11 and a 13-year-old who are pretty curious about the elections and obviously the pandemic. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
I think the age is not like one number. I can't give you a number. I think I'd have to know a lot about the maturity of your kids and what coping skills have they already developed and which ones are they seeming ready to develop now for uncertainty. So I think more than showing them the news, I think I may think in terms of asking them how they want to think about these things. What do they already know? As I mentioned earlier, what do you already know about the pandemic? And I think family conversations are probably much more important than exposing them to the news. And they may ask, you know, what did you find out, Mom or Dad, about XYZ? And then you can share it with them in a way that might be a little less shocking than the news. So I guess make it more of a conversation than an exposure to what's on the TV.
Okay, thank you. And another question about this person has done some of the suggestions that you already had mentioned with talking with their kids, listening to their feelings, giving them positive feedback. But it sounds like the kids kind of ran with some of the suggestions, and now the participant feels like they're kind of rude to the parents and wanting to know, how can I put my foot back down after I've put some of these things in place, but it didn't go quite as how I thought.
Okay, I lost your audio there just a little bit at the end. How can I?
Kind of get back control as a parent if I put some of these strategies in place, but my kids kind of ran with some things in a different direction.
Okay, so I think what we really want to do is get together and have a family meeting and just say, you know, things are a little out of balance here. Let's make a plan for ways we talk to Mom and Dad that we can all live with. You know, include the kids in the solution. Whenever a problem has arisen, bring them into it and help them develop that prefrontal cortex, that big picture look, and help them realize that there are other people on the other end of their words as well, too. You know, like you can't just be blasting things out, but you can express your feelings. We want you to express your feelings. Let's do this in a way that works for everybody. And there are many ways to do that. So we get to say, I'm feeling frustrated right now. Or maybe I'll ask you, if I guess how you're feeling, will you tell me if I'm right or wrong? It's not about agreeing with the children. It's about hearing them deeply. That part you've got going really well. If you find that they are being disrespectful, bring that to a meeting so that you can, you know, find appropriate ways to express what they want to say.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for a couple more. Another one asking about, even if your teen is doing well in school, do you still recommend putting the phone into a different room at night while they're sleeping?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with your audio, so I just couldn't hear the whole thing.
Sorry, that might be on my end, but even if you have a teen that's doing well in school, otherwise good kid, do you still recommend having their phone in a different room overnight, not in their own room?
I do, because it's so easy to slip into, you know, phones are built to addict our brains. You know, there's neuroscience that shows us that phones are built to addict our brains. And if we stop screen time an hour before we're expecting ourselves to sleep, we sleep much better. So there are two factors, the addiction factor and the ability to just go someplace you'd never gone before in an instant online, and the sleep factor. So, but I would never regard this as an edict being handed down from parents. I would include the kids in the conversation.
Thank you. We're at the end of our hour here, and I think there was a couple other questions that came through, but you can see Tina's email on there, and she's very open to receiving emails and responding. And then the handout is also posted. You can get that. You can see that here on the panel, the certificate of completion. Again, this presentation was recorded, and it will be posted on our blog website within the next couple of days. I thank everybody for attending today and listening. And Tina, thank you again very much for this wealth of information and taking your time out today. Thank you very much.
Really
Bye,
my
everybody.
pleasure, Angela. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you.
Bye-bye.